Hi everyone, welcome. We will give everybody about 30 seconds to jump in and then we're going to get started straight away. As you're joining us today, please let us know in the chat function where you're tuning in from. I would love to see where everyone is in the world and across Australia and New Zealand. So we will get started in 30 seconds. Cool. All right, we probably have enough people to just do a bit of an intro. Oh, hi from Melbourne. We've got some more Melbourne people here. Hello, welcome. So good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for our next Giants Weekly session. My name is Danny. I'm part of the team at Blackbird. So we're really excited that we've teamed up for a month of wellbeing, mindfulness and performance programming with Smiling Mind during August. And I hope that you've been able to come along to some of our sessions so far. But if you're joining us for the first time, welcome and thanks for coming along. So we're going to leave a little bit of time for questions. So if you do have your questions, please put them in the Q&A function, not in the chat. But we'll try and get through all of them if we can. So I'm going to hand it straight over to Smiling Mind CEO Adi Rutan and our guest for today, Dr. Moira Junger. Thanks so much, everyone, and see you soon.
Thanks, Danny. Hi, everyone. Good morning. It's great to be here. We're really excited to have been partnering with Blackbird in this series of events. And today we're talking about sleep. We know that sleep is a big problem for lots of people. Smiling Mind has a whole range of different programs in our app. And in our top 5 programs that are played, our 3 sleep programs are in the top 5. So we know that sleep is a challenge for kids. We know sleep is a challenge for adults. And we definitely know that sleep is a challenge for busy entrepreneurial leaders. So I'm sure today is going to be really interesting for everyone. I'm really delighted to be joined by Dr. Moira Junger. She is a health psychologist and an expert in sleep. She's also on the board of the Sleep Health Foundation, so she's got lots of expertise. So now's your time to ask questions. Consider this half an hour with your sleep expert. If you do have questions along the way, pop them into the chat box and I'll ask them of Moira. We're going to do this as a Q&A style, so there'll be a little bit of backwards and forwards between Moira and I. But to kick it off, Moira, I would like to know, why is sleep important for us? We all hear that sleep is important. Could you explain why is sleep important?
Yeah. Thanks, Addie, and welcome everyone. It's great to be here. Well, it's important for nearly every aspect of our physical health and our mental health. And we've known that for a long time. Well, certainly in Australia and the board, we've been around for 10 years, but it's only in the last sort of few years that people have been interested, really. And in the same way, I think everyone in this audience knows by now that sleep is important, but maybe not why, and I'll get to that. But in the same way that we know that drink driving is bad, and we know that getting sunburn is bad, it doesn't mean that everyone actually translates that into behaviour change. So it's probably good to, hopefully I can tease that out a little bit about why it's so hard to not listen to the messages around routines and putting away our phones earlier, etc. So why it's important for everything. For unfortunately, doom and gloom story around the links with dementia, cardiovascular health, type 2 diabetes, some cancers, and certainly our mental health. Everyone knows, even with their children, for instance, who haven't had sleep, how they have no way of regulating their mood. They're cranky, they're crying. And as adults, we're not much different, but we're just better at hiding it. So it's important for all those aspects. I could go on, and I'm letting you know earlier, we were speaking offline earlier, I'll go on and on and on, and we've only got half an hour. So rein me in with another follow-up question, because I'll just keep going.
So Moira, why, there's a link between sleep and physical health. What are some of the problems that people can experience when it comes to sleep? So, we all know how it feels when you have a bad night's sleep, but there's obviously a range of problems. So from, having a bad night's sleep all the way through to insomnia, how do you know where you sit in that spectrum?
Yeah, it's an important question, because everyone has the odd bad night, even someone like me who knows all the tricks and the tools. So it's important to realise that insomnia and obstructive sleep apnea are the two most common sleep disorders. And I'm not sure, this is the shame about the audience, I can't see my audience, I don't know exactly. I'm wondering whether it might be predominantly male and maybe younger, sort of under 55, not sure. But here to tell you that men between say 25 and 55 are at great risk of obstructive sleep apnea. 25% in fact are likely to have some kind of obstructive sleep apnea. So the snoring that's associated with not breathing. And the main thing about that, not only that it disturbs your sleep and disturbs any partner's sleep, is that you have excessive daytime sleepiness. So sleepy that you might have slept all night, but you still feel really sleepy. So that's one of the most important things to be aware of. But the other thing is insomnia. Insomnia is even more common. 40% of Australians in 2016-17 said they get inadequate sleep. But of that, about 15% have chronic insomnia. That's so bad that it's been more than 3 months, and it's been most of the week, and it's despite adequate opportunity, and it's despite trying and realising how important sleep is. So of that 40%, half have a sleep problem. They actually can't switch off their mind, or they have perhaps an apnea or something like that. But the other half are just watching Netflix too long, or working right up, thinking they're being really productive. And there's this productivity paradox that we know from research from 2016-17, that the people who were surveyed and asked specifically, what do you do in the hour before bed? Those that say, oh, I'm working, basically, I'm working in some way, are more likely to have poor quality sleep, poor quality relationships, lowered satisfaction with life, more workplace accidents and more road accidents. So it's really serious stuff. And so, but the good news is that there's lots of solutions. There's a lot of really easy things we can do to get our sleep back on track. And we don't expect it to be perfect. We know that sleep can be precarious. We know that it's a slippery sort of agent, but that we do need to take control and wrestle this beast and be in charge of it. In the same way that we can, if we're overweight, for instance, you know that it's going to be tricky, but you know you can get back on top of that. But it's going to take a lot of effort, sometimes a bit of money, like personal training or something like that, and a lot of persistence.
It's really interesting, Moira, that the KPMG report that came out last year that surveyed a whole lot of startup founders about their well-being found that about 45% of founders were not getting enough sleep, or didn't feel like they were getting enough sleep. So not getting enough sleep is obviously a big challenge. Obviously, being busy and active, and also, you know, thinking about things, complex things, trying to solve complex things is a big factor in how little sleep some people might be getting. Can you explain the link between sleep and performance? So today's session's focused on performance. So how is sleep linked to performance, and what do you think it is about busy, active minds that actually might be impacting on our quality of sleep?
Yeah, well, certainly that what I alluded to earlier, that hour before sleep is really important to switch off. So that productivity, thinking that you're going to be really productive, working really hard after hours, does in fact shoot yourself in the foot. Really interesting research from earlier, probably about 2003, and it's been replicated many times, is that people who've been awake for 17 to 19 hours, which is easy to do. That means getting up at say 6 or so, and you're driving home from something at 11. Like, it's not really excessive to be awake for that long. And a lot of people are awake for a lot longer, mind you. But you're with driver simulating tasks and other things, other performance things that people have been tested in the lab, you're the same as 0.05. So if just with no drinking so you think about performance, your performance is impaired as though you're drunk. And if you've been awake for 24 hours, your performance on those tasks you're about 0.08, and so on and so forth. So the link is really clear, and it's not just sort of a bit of light fluff. It's really serious. The other thing around performance too is the link with how important sleep is. Well, is that there's really, really nice research around looking at how your memory and your ability to stay on task and to remember people's names or to remember what you're talking about and be engaging is to do with sleep. So they've looked at people with procedural memory particularly. So if you're learning a task, say there was the finger tapping tasks and there was sort of ball tasks and things like that. So not so much your memory around just declarative memory, remembering dates and things, but remembering how to do things and especially being innovative and creative. We need sleep, because looking at people who learned the task and not sleep and the people who've had sleep, their ability to remember it is like, eightfold. So it's quite extraordinary investment. In fact, it's a $66 billion question. A Sleep on the Job report that the Sleep Health Foundation put out with Deloitte Access Economics in 2017, 18. We presented it to Parliament House in 2018. That talks about the lack of sleep, inadequate sleep, cost Australian just in 2016 to 2017, $66 billion in costs associated with not being sleep, having inadequate sleep. And part of that was wellbeing costs, but part of that was direct financial costs. So the return on investment for getting into bed a bit earlier, prioritising your health and seeing sleep alongside the other pillars of health that get much more press, like diet and exercise, have been around even on public health campaigns since my childhood. I remember Norm Life being in it, but we haven't had those big public health campaigns yet with sleep. And it's just because it's funding. That's it. It's not everyone knows the science is there. People like Sleep Health Foundation, we try, we do lots of this sort of stuff, but it's just not, no one's putting money into, the education, education of the community.
I think a lot of us take it for granted as well, that, sleep is just part of life. And sometimes it feels like you can, push it away and not, you can reduce the hours that you sleep to try and get us all of the things done that we have to do in a day. Mark has just sent through a question that I think is really relevant here. He's wondering how you know when you have a good night's sleep. Is there a checklist that you work through, Moira, to help us understand what's a good night's sleep, or am I having enough sleep, good quality sleep?
Yeah, fantastic question, Mark. And it's it's really your subjective feelings of well-being and your ability to perform your various roles. So don't judge your ability to do those things in the first minutes of waking. It's the first hour after waking that you can make that judgment. So once you've got up, once you've hopefully done some exercise, morning exercise is super important. It's even more important than evening exercise if you can get it. And we'll get to that hopefully when we're talking about solutions. But once you've been moving around, once you've had a shower, perhaps some caffeine if you're into coffee, and then an hour into it, you'll know whether your ability to stay focused. And then during the day, if you're feeling sleepy during the day, it's probably not normal, particularly if it's when you've had a full night's sleep. So if you're already sleepy at, say, 9 o'clock or 11 a.m. when you've had a full night's sleep, or even if you thought you had adequate sleep, your sleep quality or the quantity is inadequate. So there's not a checklist as such. I wish that's another thing we should develop, a really easy checklist. There is a really good the Epworth Sleepiness Scale that I use clinically, and we can use, if we had a bit more time, I'd get everyone to fill it out now. But it's just simply Google out and have a look. It's 8 questions about how sleepy you feel in different situations. But that's really it's a screening tool for people with quite excessive sleepiness. Most people, they're not in the clinical realm, but they just know they're not getting enough sleep. So it's around regulating your mood, being able to, fulfill your tasks, like being able to do the things you need to do without thinking, gee, I need to go home for a sleep. Or gee, I feel like and if I was in the room now, if the audience is in front of me, I could actually probably pinpoint who you are, because I can see it in your eyes. I can see you know it too when you see it in meetings. People have micro sleeps. Their eyelids are flickering. They're actually falling asleep. And not just because I'm boring. It's because of their condition. So it's a bit of it's a responsibility put onto us to recognise our own levels of sleepiness or fatigue. And that's another thing I'd like to have a quick talk about is being sleepy is one thing, because that's a dangerous thing for, perhaps falling asleep on the roads, or, in some other workplace machinery, etc. But being tired is something else altogether. So people with insomnia that I see, or we see in research as well, they're actually not sleepy during the day. They're wired, they're tired, and really remain very wired. In fact, so wired that they can't sleep even at night when they get the opportunity again. But someone with excessive sleepiness, that you feel, gee, I'm really sleepy, that's often to do with quality. So around the sleep apnea, some other medical conditions, thyroid issues, perhaps restless legs, something else going on. But the insomnia, straightforward insomnia, for instance, not that's straightforward, they are not sleepy people. They're just very, very tired and very emotionally disturbed, as in not so much in the mental health realm, but possibly, but really just exhausted. Fatigue is the feature.
That's really interesting. So, in a nutshell, it sounds like there's no rule around what is good quality sleep, or even how long. Obviously there's guidelines around roughly 8 hours, but obviously we're all very different.
Yeah.
But paying attention during the day to how we're feeling, whether we're wired and hyper aroused, and feeling like we're too energized, or sort of in that hyper arousal phase, that might suggest that we're not getting enough sleep. But if we're really sleepy and falling asleep, then that might suggest that we're maybe not getting very good quality sleep, or there might be something wrong with our breathing, which is sleep apnea. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
All right, Moira, let's move on to the what can we do to help ourselves get a good night's sleep? What are the do's and don'ts when it comes to sleep?
Well, one of the biggest things is to prioritise it, to recognise the importance of it. Definitely have your phone or your device out of reach, out of temptation when you're asleep, preferably out of the room. But if you need it for your alarm, have it sort of the other side of the room, or in the ensuite, or somewhere else. I think it's really important to harness your, to understand about that productivity paradox, to actually switch off at least an hour, I would hopefully 2, but an hour before bed, to have an unwind period, in the same way that you'd warm up for exercise, or you'd make sure you weren't too full for your Christmas lunch. Like, you prepare for other aspects of your health. And sleep's the same. You can't expect to just go, and then fall into bed. There has to be some kind of preparation for it. Super important to be aware of the light-dark cycle. This is your secret tool. This is your entrepreneurial tool that you've learnt today. That to be aware of the light-dark cycle, and to make that your best friend, because knowing that when it's light outside, you want to be out in it, or if you can't be out in it, be in the window, getting all that light into your eyes. And at night, when it's dark, make sure that your brain gets the message that it's dark. So you turn all the overhead lights off, just have lamps, have a dim lighting. The whole family can learn to do this. And prepare, get your brain, because the brain gets the messages that it's dark via the optic nerve, and it starts to secrete melatonin in response to darkness. So if we're in full light, like we have our screens in our faces, then we're not getting the right messages. So just no one has to be a neuroscientist. Even 5-year-olds understand that light-dark connection, and how important it is to be aware of that. So certainly the other aspects of alcohol, caffeine, make sure they're minimal. Even Sleep Health Foundation says up to 3 coffees or 4 coffees. I thought it was a bit extreme. But make sure that the coffee is minimal, and it's all done by early afternoon. Certainly alcohol, not great for sleep, but minimal amounts is fine. A couple of glasses in the evening, 3 hours before bed, is not known to have too many harmful effects. But in general terms, of course, I would, generally alcohol, caffeine to be in minimal doses at all times, really, just for general health. Other stimulants, being aware of that nicotine is a massive stimulant. People really underestimate that for sleep. It sounds like just that it's all the same stuff you know already, but to make sure that you're aware of your own individual differences, because for you know what caffeine does to you, and you also know someone else, like your partner, you can have a short black after dinner and still sleep. So, but you know that, I'm really sensitive to that. And I'm really sensitive to not, having if I don't get my exercise. So at the moment, nearly everyone's working from home, particularly, here in Melbourne, everyone's, banished from the outside world, and it's very hard to get that routine. So routine is it's super important. People if you've ever known any babies that have sleep problems and they go to sleep school, you have to think about the same principles for adults. That, there's another idea for you. I think we need to have sleep school for adults. And you think the first thing they do with babies is get all the toys out. Get all the toys out and the books and the bright colours, and just make sure that the baby knows that cot is just for sleeping, not for playing. So us as adults too, get the toys out. Don't have your devices. Don't have your TV. Don't have your laptop. Don't have all that stimulation. To be very aware that your bed is just for sleeping. And one of the most important tools also that you can learn and teach your kids this and teach your colleagues this is we all need to know how to self-soothe. We all need to know what makes us calm. How do we calm ourselves down? It's not just with, with booze or with pills or with other things. It's important that with meditation, for instance, and it's not just because this is a Smiling Mind event. It's actually, I've been talking about this for a long time. The evidence is super clear that we do need to know how to switch our brains, at least temporarily, to be able to stay in the here and now, because we get so overwhelmed with the anticipatory arousal space, all the what ifs, or and the planning, and also all the rumination, all the shoulds, woulds, could have, oh my God, going over that space too. So we need to know before we hit the bed how to keep our brains away from those dangerous spaces and to stay connected to just the here and now. So that will be different things for different people. But it's more nuanced than just, the listicles that you look up and get, the top 5 tips. It's actually the top 5 tips for you, what works for you rather than everyone else, because everyone is quite unique. But they're the principles, at least.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. It sounds like it's a combination between what we do just before bed, but also what we do during the day. So, all of the things that we do during the day. I know I'm in Melbourne as well, and that we're limited in how much we can go outside, and that has impacted on like how physically tired I feel at the end of the day. I do a lot of Zoom calls and I'm feeling to be emotionally tired, but that physical part, the exercise for me seems to have a really close relationship with how well I sleep at night. Would that be the case for most people, do you think, Moira?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's really clearly shown to be very beneficial for sleep. And we used to say until 2014 or so, we really warned against evening exercise, but the evidence is quite clear now that morning or night, whenever you get it, it's better than nothing. But it's still clear that morning exercise is better. And it's really important because with, you're probably all aware that during sleep, there's like vacuum cleaners, a big set of cleaners come through in a way and deep clean the brain, and all the toxins are vacuumed up. And when we don't sleep, they're there. Like young, healthy people with one night of sleep deprivation, scarily, they have all the plaque and all the toxins in the brain that you see with the early signs of dementia. But the good news is as soon as they sleep again, they go away. So it shows us what happens during sleep. And during exercise, it's the same. So if you do a walk around the block, 20, 30 minutes, we do a blood test beforehand and then a blood test afterwards, extraordinary differences in cortisol. And so it's like it's like someone's come in and sucked up all the stress hormones again, like just with the exercise. So if we hit the bed, having done those sorts of things, we've cleaned out our system, and we haven't got too much. We haven't got stimulation or emotional stimulation, or caffeine, or alcohol. That although as a sedative, it's really disruptive. The latter part of the night it's shocking for sleep quality. So so doing all that's really is really important. I just saw a question that came through about I just wanted to, because I don't see many of them, but I took my eye then around books in bed, and talking about the toys in the bedroom. And technically, like textbooks, and my colleagues would say, no books in bed. I'm a bit of a softie with that. I think that if you read in bed and you're asleep within 15 minutes, then that's fine. But a lot of people are reading in bed, especially on a light device, which is no good. Lighting your eyes. But it's also important to realise that some people read right until 2 in the morning, which is really not, it's counterproductive. So reading for a short period of time is okay, particularly if it's really comforting and soothing for you. But if you know yourself, everyone knows whether that's a bit of a problem. They probably should just sit up in bed and read, or sit in the chair next to the bed and read. And then when you're sleepy and tired, turn the lights off then and get under the covers and go for it.
So Moira, if we are having trouble with sleep, and it sounds like lots of people do have trouble with sleep, where do we start? What do you recommend? Do we go and see a professional? What apps do you love? What can people actually start to experiment with to try and help them get a better night's sleep?
Yeah. First of all, the vast majority of people will not need professional help. It's sort of like a stepped care model that most people, like say if you want to get fit or you want to lose weight, most people don't need a professional. They can probably do it themselves. But it depends on the extreme and how extreme it is and how distressed you are, and then whether there's comorbidities. Some people might have associated quite extreme depression and or anxiety. So in that sense, you go to your GP and you get a referral to a sleep specialist, and there's plenty all around the world, plenty all across Australia. But in terms of, people who don't need that step, people who just think, I would definitely, the apps like Smiling Mind, they've got some really good sleep-related ones. The Sleep Health Foundation has stacks of 80 different fact sheets that can, and also we've got a list of practitioners, referral service. I was just lost my train of thought then about a really good online, what professionals do for insomnia is teach people about CBTI. It's a process of maybe 4 to 6 sessions or so. So it costs a bit of time and money to do that. But there's a fabulous online program at the moment, evidence-based CBTI, that used to cost money, but during the COVID situation, this not-for-profit organisation in Sydney based called This Way Up, they have an online CBTI evidence-based, incredibly good course that I've had a look at and give the good thumbs up. That would be something I'd recommend people to do. If the self-help approach isn't your thing, if you feel like you're doing a good assessment, then yeah, I would definitely GP referral and looking at some kind of sleep specialist. The sleep physician is the one required to check out whether you might have sleep apnea. There's no way they can diagnose it really without a overnight sleep study. And even in Melbourne, they're still happening. Like there's some hospitals that it's really hard to get people in at the moment, but a couple of people recently have been able to get into some hospitals are still doing those sorts of things. But the vast majority, particularly young, healthy people, vast majority will be a self-help model, and it's about really increasing your self-awareness, bio-mindfulness, knowing what's going on for you, asking yourself, what am I really? I probably am struggling, and I'm going to learn how to learn how to soothe my mind. I'm going to change my behaviours. I'm going to, make changes to my diet. I'm going to work out how I can redirect my focus away from work to the messages around that I am safe, I am well, I need this sleep. I'm going to invest in rest for the increase in my productivity that I'll have tomorrow, and being quite disciplined about it.
Thank you, Moira. It sounds like routine and getting to know yourself and being honest with yourself about what works and what doesn't work is really essential. And I'm sure there's that tendency to keep working and keep doing, even though we know that it may not be the best for us. And I mean, for those of you who haven't tried mindfulness before, it's nothing to be scared of. It's a practice that's very easy to integrate into your day. And the benefit of practicing things throughout the day is actually that you help learn how to change the way that you think about things. You unhook from those negative, critical, worrying thoughts, and often it is those thoughts that actually stop us from getting off to sleep. And when our head hits the pillow, we're still wired and thinking. So how do we actually do things through the day that actually help us to prevent that from happening? We have got 1 minute left on our clock. So if you've got a question, please pop it in the box. There is a question, Moira, about recommendations for specialists in New Zealand, in Auckland. I'm not sure if you're the right person to ask about Auckland.
Yes, well, I do know a couple of specialists there. A doctor, a psychiatrist, but he's a sleep related, sleep specialist. He's attached to the university there, Dr. Antonio Fernando. And there are, I'm not sure in Auckland, but in New Zealand, there's about at least 5 sort of psychologists that I know that specialise in sleep. And I can probably send those details if that person, via you, Addie, I can get that information to you.
Yeah.
But one of the final 10 seconds, to be successful with sleep, it's really important to not try too hard as well. Don't go anywhere near the bed until you're actually ready for sleep, not just because your clock says it's 10 o'clock. It's really important to make sure that you are sleepy and tired and ready. Otherwise, you're just caught up in a cycle of frustration. So just wait a little bit longer, because not everyone needs, maybe you might only need 7 hours, or you can have a nap during the day for 15, 20 minutes and make up that time, because not everyone needs 8 hours. We need 7 to 9, or some people maybe 6 right through to 10 is considered normal in some cases.
Great. Well, the message is get to know what you need. I don't know if watching The Bachelor before bed is a self-soothing practice, but it depends on how emotionally engaged you get with The Bachelor. We are out of time. Oh, unless you've got a thought on that, Moira.
No, well, my only thought was that TV across the room is different to TV on a device. So in terms of that interaction and the light, so it's a lesser evil TV. And I don't know much about The Bachelor. It's not my thing.
So get out of bed, watch The Bachelor in your lounge room, then get ready for bed and go into your bed for sleep. Okay, we are out of time. There's lots of questions about tips and things, so we will talk to Danny about sending through a whole lot of tips from today's session, and today's session's also been recorded, so you can watch it again. Next week we have Hugh Van Cuylenberg, who's going to come and talk to us about resilience. So he runs an organisation called the Resilience Project. He's a very engaging, compelling speaker. Don't miss it. It'll be a great session. So see you then.